Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today I'll be doing a review of the brand new film Ghostbusters Afterlife, a very anticipated film to come out this year. I will be doing both a spoiler-free and spoiler-filled conversation about this movie, so I'll make sure to let you all know once I reach into the spoiler territory. Before I go any further though, please make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button, and smash the rumble button. It really does mean a lot, and also make sure you hit that subscribe button with that bell notification on, that way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. All right, so as I said, start off with some non-spoiler thoughts here, but I will say that anything I mention that has been featured in the trailer of the film is fair game, and so if you want to go in completely blind to this film, which I totally understand and obviously would encourage just for, basic enjoyment purposes, I totally understand if you need to click away and watch this at another time, but going into just the basic plot of the film. So you have the character played by Carrie Coon, who is the daughter of Egon Spengler, and we find out, of course, that not only is she, and this is something that's revealed in the trailer, that she is the daughter of Egon, but also that, therefore, the characters played by Finn Wolfhard and McKenna Grace are the grandkids of Egon. And, of course, throughout the course of the film, as is described in their basic character descriptions, she has very much a very negative outlook on her father, because in her mind, her father had abandoned her to go to this random town in the middle of nowhere, and so therefore she does not have a good relationship. And so I think some people, myself included, were a little concerned about that from the very beginning, saying, okay, they're playing the single mom character, and so is there going to be a bad dad story kind of attached to this? And in a way there is, but I think that the payoff that you get is going to be well worth it, and again, I think kind of helps to kind of get through that just a little bit more without going into any more details about that. I do also want to say that first off, I really enjoy this movie. Let me start off right there. I thoroughly enjoy this movie. In fact, I'm just so excited to talk about this movie that I kind of just lost myself for a second. I came out of this film, and one of the first things I wanted to do was to talk about it. So I put a mini review out on Shorts, on Instagram, on other places, because I just really wanted to share my excitement for this film. I have not felt this excited after a film in a very long time, and obviously I've had a lot of favorite films this year, and there's other films that I think are much better than this film is, because this film definitely has its faults, but I was just excited, and I just want to give the kudos to Jason Reitman, the director of this film, Ivan Reitman, who produced this film, and just everyone else who was involved with the project for creating a fun movie. It's not often that we just get fun movies that have, decent stories. There's definitely some issues with the story, I would say, but decent stories. It also has, of course, its fair share of nostalgia, but it's nostalgia done right. It's nostalgia done in the right way, where it just gets you excited, it just makes you happy, and you leave the theater happy. And that's the other thing too, is that so often we are given movies with, post-credit scenes or something like that, where we're just kind of left in a position of like, oh, I'm not really that happy, or I'm not really all that excited. But this one, it just leaves you in a really good mood from the very beginning of the end, going all the way even through the credits, which I think, again, is a big kudos to them. So talking about just, again, some of the strengths before getting into the weaknesses of the movie, let me start off by saying the strengths is, I think, by far, some of the acting choices. I think having people like Finn Wolfhard in this movie is a great choice, not just because I think that Finn Wolfhard is a very young, talented actor, but also he's the kind of person that you're going to need if you want to have this film reach out to a younger generation. Because one of the things that this film is able to do is it's able to tie both the original OG 1980s Ghostbusters in, like, the mindset and obviously mentioning of the characters in with this new age, right? In with this current 2021 time. And so what you're going to be able to do by having the likes of Finn Wolfhard and to a certain extent McKenna Grace is going to be able to bring in audiences that otherwise would have either no interest or no knowledge of Ghostbusters, or their only knowledge would be the atrocious Ghostbusters 2016. So that, to me, I think was already a really good choice of having those younger actors in the film and also being the focus. I know that some people have been critical of that element of it being focused on these younger kids and it being kind of like a derivative of Stranger Things in certain ways, especially with the Finn Wolfhard connection. And I can totally understand, and I totally think that that's a valid thing to bring up. But from a marketing standpoint, I think that is kind of what they needed to do. Right? It's not even just Ghostbusters Afterlife. It is Ghostbusters, hey, we're trying to save the franchise after the atrocity of 2016. which made a lot of people just say, screw this, what the hell is this? And if that was their first introduction to the world of Ghostbusters, I can imagine why people would say, this is stupid, this is dumb. This instead is trying to, again, bring it back, but also is paying attention to, all right, trying to get the pulse. What is it that a lot of younger audiences and a lot of even just young adult audiences are really interested in? And here's the thing, Stranger Things is still a very hot property, a very hot commodity. And so having those characters and having that be the focus is going to help just from that reason alone. Also, the same thing with bringing in people like Paul Rudd into this as well. Paul Rudd is just that everyday guy who people just generally like, right? He plays that character very well, and he does that again in this film too, right? You're just like, I just like this guy. He is, again, the nice guy. He is just a very likable personality, and I think that it's something that is able to really kind of bring a balance to the story, because even though you do have this focus on these younger characters, you also have this focus on these newer adult characters that we have not been introduced to either. And I think that the introduction of Paul Rudd into this universe is, I think, a very, very good thing. The other really great thing I love about this film is the score, because they're actually able to not only have bits of their own original score, but they're also able to bring in elements of the original score as well. And I think that that is something that is really worth commending, because there's just so many moments throughout the film where, again, you're being hit with nostalgia, but then all of a sudden there's a piece of that original score that comes in and you're just like, oh, okay. And it just, again, if you're a fan of the originals, you just get more excited, because you're like, oh, I recognize this. I recognize this music. I recognize this tone. Oh, this is a perfect moment for this type of tone to be used. And it's great. So you've got this really good mix of old and new that's done very, very well. And it's done even better when you can dive further into the spoilers, which, again, I'll get to in a second. But I think that, again, the score really does help to bring a balance to the film by having elements of the original score, inspired by the original score, in addition to newer elements brought into it as well. Something else that is not necessarily a positive, but is more of a mix, is that the visual effects, which I thought were going to be pretty trash, were going to be pretty terrible based on what was shown in the trailers, ended up being pretty well done. It was actually done pretty passably. It's not the best visual effects that you'll ever see, but I think that one thing that has absolutely had an impact on my viewing of the visual effects for this film is finding out that the film's budget was only around $75 million, which, again, is still a decent amount of money for people like us, but when we live in an age where most films like this would be given $100+ million at least, keep in mind, A Wrinkle in Time, that atrocity was given $100 million of a budget. You start to realize, wait a minute, they were actually able to do a heck of a lot for having so very little money in the bank, so to say, to be able to bring in. So talking about some of the negatives, I will definitely say story is definitely where this film kind of gets hit a little bit. It's mostly just because of the fact that they do try and basically have this all-encompassing film in about a 2-hour time slot, which is a good decision, because having a film that's 2.5 hours can be very overburdened. We have way too many of those films nowadays. So having this film come in around 2 hours, 2 hours and 10 minutes, I think is the right choice. But they did have to make some sacrifices in certain story elements. And so there's certain characters that are mentioned that really you don't get a lot of detail about. And I have questions in my spoiler section about, is there more fleshing out of these characters in certain other properties that feature the Ghostbusters or not? And again, I think that that could have an impact then on people who have, again, a full all-encompassing view of this franchise. And so again, I think that the story, though, having some of those elements where there's certain pieces that seem to be missing, definitely has an impact on a bit of certain elements of the story and certain elements of the enjoyment of the story. But because they have nostalgia, because it's not just nostalgia for the sake of nostalgia, but it's nostalgia done right, especially the ending, which I cannot wait to talk about. I think that this is a movie that's going to leave a lot of people who are fans of the original franchise really happy. I think there's a lot of stuff in here to make original fans, OG fans, really, really happy. It's going to make anyone who hated the 2016 Ghostbusters happy as well, because there's no reference to them whatsoever. It's like that movie doesn't even exist, and so it's great that that is the case. And I think that it's also going to bring in new fans, and that's the other thing, is that this is going to bring in younger audiences and new fans who then, after seeing this, might say, hey, wait a minute, I want to find out more about these other characters who are being referenced in this movie, and find out a little bit of the backstory, right? Find out a little bit more about, who these characters are, and actually we'll introduce them to the OG Ghostbusters from the 1980s. And I think that that is just a good way to kind of tie this all together. And also, if you are buying your tickets on AMC, for instance, I know they have a deal where if you get your ticket, you can get you can get basically a rental to the original film for a lot cheaper than what you typically can. So I think that's also a good marketing scheme to be like, hey, watch the original film. So that way you have a little bit more backstory before going into it. So if I'm going to go ahead and give a grade to this film before jumping into my spoilers, again, I was in this B+, A- territory, but for me, the ending especially pushes this film into the A- territory. I think this is a great, fun film. It's a movie that I think also is going to be able to get Ghostbusters fans and new fans hyped enough to where it's going to be doing a lot better at the box office than what they expect it to do. At least that's my hope. I also want to say that I think there is a very clear campaign being done right now with critics trying to drive this film down as much as possible because they do not want this film to be more successful than the 2016 Ghostbusters. I mean, the fact that 2016 Ghostbusters, as terrible that film was, is still quote-unquote certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, but got eviscerated in the audience scores. And now this film is getting, again, eviscerated by the critics, but is getting praised, at least in this early time, right, with early reviews out. Last time I checked with some of the different websites, I think the Rotten Tomatoes score might be around a 95% positive rating on places like Metacritic, for instance. It's right now at an 8 rating, which again, very little ratings in there. But as you can see, the Metacritic score has dropped down to 47 with a lot of mixed reviews and negative reviews as well. And keep in mind that I think now at this point, this film has either the same or more negative reviews than Ghostbusters 2016. So I think that all needs to be taken into account here, that I think critics are going to be trying to drive this film down, where audiences, and we all know this happens all the time, audiences are the ones that can save films, especially from box office failure, because it's the fans that actually spend the money. Critics, they get to be invited to these showings. They get to go to these showings for free. They usually get even goodie bags, and yet they will sometimes tear apart films and tear apart films from certain studios based on a wide variety, a plethora of reasons, and I do not think for a second that them not trying to save the 2016 Ghostbusters is not a part of their motivation for this film. So now I'm going to be diving into some spoiler discussion. So again, if you do not want to know any spoilers about the film, you might want to click away now. But again, I give this film an A- rating. All right, let's talk about kind of something that is I think it's going to cause some division, but not as much because of the way that it's played out. So obviously, this is a movie that exists in a world where all the Ghostbusters are still alive. All the actors who play the Ghostbusters are still alive, except for Harold Ramis back in 2014. And obviously, the death of Harold Ramis had an impact on basically this Ghostbusters 3. And that's the other thing too. This is Ghostbusters 3. There's some people who've been kind of fighting me on that. No, this is a completion of the Ghostbusters story, and the post-credit scenes, I think, really indicate that that is kind of the goal of this movie. And I think that if they do any plans whatsoever to try and continue this on in any way, I think it would actually be a really bad choice. Even if this film is a massive financial success, if they decide to say, oh yeah, we're going to go ahead and continue this on and make a Ghostbusters 4, that would be a terrible decision. And I think that should make some people happy, though, right? For anyone that's still watching this, kind of wanting to know the spoilers because they don't want to be, immensely disappointed, this is not a movie that's setting up for a reboot of the franchise. This is a movie that is in a lot of ways closing. It's closing the franchise. It's closing things out, right? That's why, as you can see, right, it's listed as Ghostbusters 3 in a lot of ways because it is. And I know that some people may have said, yeah, but I would rather have had the focus of a Ghostbusters 3 be on the original characters. I get that, but here's the thing. Those characters, those actors are so old now that if they were going to do a full-fledged feature-length film as the Ghostbusters, it wouldn't play out the way that I think a lot of us would want it to. You need to have new blood. You need to have new characters in with the old, and I know that some people would have liked to have at least seen more of the old, but something tells me that when you have some of the actors and some of the personalities at play here, especially with people like Bill Murray, we all know the kind of character that Bill Murray can be outside of films and in his personal life, that you need to be able to have realistic limitations on those things. And I think the way that they, at the very end, bring the OG Ghostbusters back is brilliant. So again, you have these new era Ghostbusters, but they don't call them Ghostbusters. In fact, there's one point where McKenna Grace is going up, and there's a line that she says where you think, oh, she's going to say, I'm a Ghostbuster. Like, she's like, I'm not this, I'm a Ghostbuster. Instead, what did she say? I'm a scientist. And at that point, I'm like, brilliant. Brilliant. Because that is, again, showing that this is not an attempt to try and recast the Ghostbusters or reboot the Ghostbusters with these new kid characters, at least based on this initial release, but instead is meant to really showcase one of the most powerful elements of this movie, which is the relationship between her and her grandfather that she never knew, and the only thing that she ever knew about him was that he had abandoned her mom, but finds out later she is just like him. that her love of science and that her nerdiness comes from him. And then over the course of the film realizes that he did not abandon her. And that's the other thing that I really love, is that it's not a case of a child being abandoned or a daughter being abandoned. It's rather the father sacrificing everything, including his family, to try and literally save mankind. And that is exactly what happens with the character of Egon. He leaves everything because he finds out there's this one singular location where this is where the end of the world could happen, and he has to keep it at bay, and no one else will believe him about it, right? He loses all of his friends. He loses the original Ghostbusters. Only he then is able to do this, and so he has to literally leave his family to do this. And then there's this great moment at the end where they do have this reconciliation. And so getting into kind of the controversial bit, they bring Harold Ramis back. And obviously this is the way they do that is through CGI. But though this is something that I think is going to cause some division, because I do think that it is somewhat untasteful to bring people who are dead back from the dead through CGI means, right? We saw that happen in was it Solo: A Star Wars Story, in Rogue One, and I just don't really like it. The reason why they do it and the way they do this one, I think, is done incredibly tastefully. So you see in the very beginning the character of Egon. You don't see his face, right? They're very clever not to show the face or anything like that. So it's very clear that they're trying to show you that this is Egon, but they're not using CGI yet at that point in time. They're just trying to show like kind of what is the motivation for the family of Egon to go to this farm to find out, to find out what happened, and to what they think is try and get basically anything that he left behind. But in the very end, you have this very powerful moment where McKenna Grace, right, the granddaughter of Egon, is fighting off against Gozer. So that's the other reason why this is very much a conclusion. Gozer comes back, and so she's fighting against Gozer, and she's, again, kind of falling behind, is about to lose to Gozer, and then all of a sudden you see these ghost hands come right up next to her to support her, and who is it? It's Harold Ramis's ghost. And it was that moment where it was so powerful, I started to tear up. Even though I knew that it was a CGI rendering of the character. One, it was a very well done CGI rendering, whether it was deepfake, whatever the technology they use, it was very well done. And it was just a very powerful moment because you're just like, okay, the grandfather is saying, I got your back, right? I did not abandon you, right? Now you know, right? Because this is after that it's been revealed about why Egon did what he did. And so it's like, I got your back, I support you. And then, of course, at the very end, there's this fantastic moment because you have the three Ghostbusters who come back, right? You have Ernie Hudson. By the way, Ernie Hudson looks fantastic. Hasn't aged a day. It's just amazing. Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray there. And then all of a sudden, right next to them, standing there, is, again, the ghost of Harold Ramis. And I think it's done. It can only really be done in a film like this, right? Where they deal with the afterlife, where they deal with ghost. And the character doesn't speak. It's just there, gives facial emotions. And I think it's done in such a tasteful way. And it's really a love letter in a lot of ways to Harold Ramis. It's really a love letter to the Ghostbusters. It's really a love letter to the fans of the franchise. And so I think that that's why a lot of fans are going to look to that moment and just be kind of moved, like I am right now, just remembering it. It's just incredibly moving. And so, of course, it also then leads to, at the end, where the daughter's character, by Carrie Coon, right, the mother of the younger characters in the film, is able to say goodbye to her father with a final hug. And as he hugs her, he fades away. And at the very end, right, as he fades away, that's kind of like the end of the movie. And so it fades, and then all all you see are the letters for Harold. And so then you realize, okay, this movie is made for Harold Ramis in memory and respect of Harold Ramis. They bring him back in this way, in a respectful fashion, to pay respects to not just Egon, but also to the person. There's a lot of really great one-liners, especially. There are a lot of great jokes that are made, not just by McKenna Grace, by the way, is freaking hilarious with the jokes that she makes in this movie, but then also you have the jokes between the main characters at the end as well. And I think that what this really does show, though, is that it's a conclusion to the story, which brings us to the post-credit scenes. So there's a couple of post-credit scenes. So one is when Sigourney Weaver finally shows up in the film, because part of me was wondering, is like, okay, I thought I saw her name mentioned at certain points. Where does it come up? And so it's her and Bill Murray doing the cards and again, it's just a really funny moment, really lighthearted. It's great to see those actors going off of each other again, the same chemistry that they had in the original. It's fantastic. And then the very last one is one where it was a little bit weird because it's Annie Potts talking with Ernie Hudson's character, who has built a really powerful empire, essentially, and he has been supporting all the other Ghostbusters basically without their knowledge of it. And basically, all of a sudden, you see him buy up the old Ghostbusters location, which, of course, is rundown, etc. And they pull in the Ecto-1. And he had said at one other point in the earlier part of the film when he sees the car for the first time in a long time, and he says, what happened to you, girl? It's like, don't worry, I'm going to take care of you. So this is very end moment where all of a sudden it's brought back into the original location. Ernie Hudson's character is touching it again, showing that he is going to, basically reestablish and save it. And then at the very end, you get this moment of going to the little machine that was like the warning bell, right? The thing that held all of the ghosts and all the spirits. And so it's going off. And so you're thinking, oh man, they're just going to release all these ghosts back into the world. And so, oh man, this is going to be kind of setting up for something. And then it just cuts away. And then they have a new rendition of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, but the little small ones that are featured in the film. So in that way, to me, that was a director saying, gotcha. Like, oh, you thought we were setting up for a future film? Nope. Like, this is meant to be a conclusion. And I think doing that was very tasteful. And also, it was done in a way where I think a lot of people are going to be happy with this story. But anyway, those are my spoiler-filled thoughts. What are your thoughts about this movie? Again, any of the spoiler stuff, please do label spoiler in your comments, just for those that have not seen it. But even for obviously, if you're still watching and you didn't care about spoilers, just let me know in the comment section below what you thought about this film. I loved it. I thought that there was so much. There's probably even things that I've forgotten to talk about, and it'll be talked about, I'm sure, on Friday Night Tights and also in future streams that I do on the channel as well. But again, very well done film here. I think that this is, again, a great conclusion to the story, and I think the end credits really do kind of play on this is a conclusion to this story. I know some people would have loved to have seen more of the original characters, but we got to be realistic. That's just not something that was going to be in the cards for both schedule and personality reasons. And I think that this is really the best that we can really have asked for. And the introduction of characters like McKenna Grace and Finn Wolfhard are not done to try and continue the franchise with new people, but instead to bring in a younger audience to hopefully introduce them to the love, the passion that is Ghostbusters, and hopefully to introduce them to the original films as well and find out a little bit more about why is that moment at the end so emotional. And I think anything that's going to let people look up the character of Egon and therefore look up about the actor Harold Ramis is ultimately a good thing. So again, shout out to Harold Ramis, rest in peace. Shout out to everyone involved with this film because I loved it. Anyway. And so, of course, as soon as I hit stop recording on the video, I was reminded of yet another part of the spoiler discussion. So J.K. Simmons actually is in this film, and he plays a character that I don't really know much about because I never played the video game before, but he plays Ivo Shandor, who is referenced in the original film and apparently also appears in the 2009 video game, which I've never played. So my question is for anyone that has seen it, who, again, just label your comment as spoilers or contact me individually. But if you know anything more about this character or about the video game, do they flesh out his character in the video game a bit more? Because that's the one thing story-wise where I didn't want to get into it in the non-spoiler section about why is it that basically one of the weaknesses is they don't really go into him. They mention him, he's there, and then basically he's just there as cannon fodder, where essentially as soon as Gozer's brought back, he's like, I've built this temple for you, Gozer, so that we can rule the world, and then split apart. It's pretty funny to me. But again, I don't really know much about this person of Shandor. So if you know anything about it, please let me know that in the comments as well. All right, I'm going to try and cut this in somewhere, and so hopefully it's a natural cut, and back to the video. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If this video, smash that like button, smash the rumble button, and light up that fire button. Honestly, you're all amazing people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my November Patreon, Subscribestar, and Locals members. Starting first off with Patreon, Andrew Hoyle, animation commentator, Brandon, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Dolores Ed, Dion, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father. Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Harold Francis, Inflamed Wood, Jacob the Juice, JC, Jeffrey Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Gomer Kyle 79, Laura the Modern Major General Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Ullen, Stan Andrian, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, and Tina B, the Empress of the Universe. And a shout out to my Subscribe Star members, UAB, Mad Dog, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, Stan 4, John B, Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J, Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, and J Rod, the Beer Guru, and of course, ZK Man. Thank you very much for supporting me over there. And to my 3 supporters over on locals.com, Kara Tharp, Bifford a Hobbit, and Robert Barnes. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and every video I do on the channel, check out that top link in the description below to find out how to sign up to the various levels that exist, including the most basic level where you get a shout out, the secondary level, the Army of Asgard, where you get that, plus access to a giveaways exclusive server where I give away things like 4Ks and Blu-rays and digital codes. All kinds of stuff, a lot of fun. You then also have the Keeper of the Bifrost level where you get all that stuff, plus access to an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger. You get to ask us questions, and you get also access to that and the entire library of podcast episodes that we have done. And then there is, of course, the Chosen of Valhalla level, where not only do you get all of that, but also in your first month, you get a t-shirt of your choice and sent to you anywhere in the world. Of course, just let me know your size and the color option that you want. It'll be sent to you that first month. And also, you get to be featured on the once a month Chosen of Valhalla live stream, where we have a ton of fun talking about movies and projects and all kinds of stuff. Pretty much anything that the Chosen wants to talk about is on the table. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, check out that top link. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.